Maya Kim stares at the eviction notice in her trembling hands, knowing that in 3 days she will lose everything unless a miracle appears. At 24, she has exactly $437 in her checking account, a sick grandmother whose medical bills consume every paycheck, and a job that barely covers rent in Seoul's most affordable neighborhood. But tonight, she sits in the gleaming offices of Sterling Marketing Solutions, working past midnight again, hoping that her dedication might finally earn the promotion she desperately needs. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead in the empty office building, casting harsh shadows across her worn desk. Maya's natural hair is pulled back in a neat bun, her second-hand blazer pressed, but clearly showing its age. Her dark eyes, usually bright with determination, now reflect exhaustion and growing panic. She has been here for 6 months, handling the most difficult international accounts, translating between Korean and English for demanding clients, staying late to perfect every presentation. Yet while her coworkers leave at 5, Maya remains, driven by the knowledge that her grandmother's medication costs more per month than most people's rent. Sterling Marketing occupies 3 floors of one of Seoul's most prestigious business towers. The company handles marketing campaigns for major international corporations, and Maya's role as administrative assistant barely scratches the surface of her capabilities. She speaks fluent Korean and English, holds a business degree from a respected university, and has single-handedly resolved more client crises than anyone wants to acknowledge. But in a company where advancement depends more on connections than competence, Maya finds herself perpetually overlooked. Her supervisor, Ms. Park, arrived 3 months ago with impressive credentials and an immediate dislike for Maya that seems to intensify with each passing week. Tonight, Maya reviews client files for tomorrow's presentation, unaware that several critical documents have been deliberately removed from her folders. She works methodically through the remaining materials, her pen scratching notes in the margins, occasionally glancing at the executive conference room where important meetings happen behind frosted glass doors. Through those doors, she has glimpsed a man who appears regularly for high-level consultations. Kang Junho commands attention without saying a word. Late 30s, impeccably dressed in suits that cost more than Maya's annual salary, he moves through the office with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to power. His dark hair is always perfectly styled, his sharp features set in an expression of controlled intensity that makes junior executives nervous. Maya has noticed him watching the office operations during his visits, his dark eyes missing nothing, but she has never spoken to him directly. Junho's presence creates a subtle shift in the building's atmosphere. Conversations quiet when he walks past, assistants straighten their postures, and even senior partners defer to his opinions during meetings. He speaks in measured tones, never raises his voice, yet his words carry weight that suggests consequences for those who disappoint him. Maya has observed him from a distance, noting how his expensive cologne leaves a subtle trail of cedar and bergamot, how his movements are precise and deliberate, how he seems to catalog every detail of his surroundings. During their brief encounters in elevators or hallways, Junho has acknowledged Maya with slight nods, his gaze lingering on her face with what might be curiosity. She has caught him watching her work through the glass partition of the conference room, particularly during the late evening hours when most staff have departed. His attention makes her self-conscious about her worn clothing and second-hand furniture, but also strangely protected, as if his presence creates an invisible barrier against the office politics that constantly threaten her position. Tonight, Maya discovers that tomorrow's crucial client presentation is missing its financial projections, market analysis data, and competitive research. Her heart sinks as she searches through every file, every email, every shared drive folder. These documents were present yesterday when she conducted her final review. Now, with the presentation scheduled for 9 a.m., she faces an impossible task of recreating hours of work in the remaining darkness before dawn. Her phone buzzes with a text from her grandmother's nurse. The medication costs have increased again. Insurance will not cover the new prescription. Maya stares at the message, calculating numbers that do not add up. Even with the promotion she has been promised for months, she cannot keep pace with the medical expenses that grow like shadows across her grandmother's remaining time. Maya's hands shake as she opens her laptop, determined to rebuild the missing presentation materials from memory and whatever resources she can access. The office building settles around her with the creaks and sighs of a structure at rest, but Maya's mind races with desperate energy. She has survived worse situations through pure determination, but tonight feels different. Tonight feels like the edge of a cliff she cannot see in the darkness. Through the conference room glass, she glimpses movement. Junho sits alone at the massive table, reviewing documents in the pool of light from a single desk lamp. His suit jacket hangs perfectly on his broad shoulders, his white shirt immaculate despite the late hour. He appears completely absorbed in his work, but Maya senses his awareness of her presence, the way predators remain alert even while focused on specific prey. As Maya frantically searches for backup copies of the missing files, she remains unaware that Ms. Park has orchestrated this crisis specifically to destroy her credibility. The missing documents rest safely in Ms. Park's personal files, ready to be produced after Maya's inevitable failure tomorrow morning. The trap has been set with calculated precision, designed to eliminate the one employee whose competence poses a threat to Ms. Park's authority. Maya works until 4 a.m., managing to reconstruct partial data through online research and memory, but knowing her efforts fall short of the professional standards expected for such an important client. She prints her incomplete materials with growing despair, understanding that tomorrow will likely bring the end of her employment and any hope of supporting her grandmother's medical needs. She gathers her belongings in the gray light of dawn, unaware that Kang Junho has observed her entire night of desperate labor through the conference room glass. His dark eyes have tracked her every movement, noted her dedication, her competence under pressure, her refusal to abandon responsibility even when facing impossible circumstances. In a few hours, when Ms. Park executes her planned humiliation, Junho will be ready to act. Maya arrives at Sterling Marketing at 8:30, her incomplete presentation materials clutched in sweaty palms, knowing she faces professional destruction in 30 minutes. She has spent the pre-dawn hours trying to salvage what she could from the missing files, but the gaps in her data remain glaring. The office buzzes with Monday morning energy as colleagues sip coffee and discuss weekend plans, unaware that Maya's career hangs by threads that Ms. Park has already cut. The conference room fills with senior partners, junior executives, and the demanding client whose multi-million-dollar account depends on today's presentation. Maya sets up her laptop with trembling fingers, hoping that her partial reconstruction might somehow prove sufficient. Through the glass partition, she notices Kang Junho settling into his usual chair at the far end of the table, his presence commanding even in silence. His dark suit appears freshly pressed, his sharp features composed in an expression of neutral observation. Ms. Park enters with theatrical confidence, carrying a folder that Maya recognizes with sinking horror. Those are the missing files, the complete data sets that disappeared from Maya's desk overnight. Ms. Park's smile holds the satisfaction of a predator about to strike, her eyes gleaming with anticipated triumph as she takes her position at the front of the room. The presentation begins with Maya's stammered explanations for incomplete market analysis and missing financial projections. Her voice wavers as she attempts to navigate around the gaps in her materials, acutely aware of the client's growing dissatisfaction and the partner's exchanged glances of disapproval. Maya's heart pounds against her ribs as she struggles through data that should have been comprehensive but instead reveals embarrassing holes in research and preparation. When Maya concludes her inadequate presentation, silence fills the conference room like poison gas. The client's representative, a stern American businessman, expresses his disappointment in terms that cut through Maya's professional composure. Sterling Marketing has failed to deliver the thorough analysis promised in their proposal. The account may be reconsidered. Partnerships may be terminated. Ms. Park rises from her chair with practiced precision, her voice carrying across the room with deadly authority. Maya Kim has been responsible for this project for 3 months, she announces. Maya had access to all necessary resources and data. This failure represents not just incompetence, but possible theft of company materials for personal gain. She has discovered evidence that Maya may have leaked confidential information to competing firms. Maya's blood turns to ice water in her veins. The accusation of corporate espionage hangs in the air like a death sentence, destroying not just her current position, but any hope of future employment in Seoul's tight-knit business community. Her mouth opens and closes without sound as she struggles to form a defense against charges she cannot comprehend. "Stand up," Miss Park commands, her voice cutting through Maya's paralysis. In front of the entire conference room, the senior partners, the disappointed client, and the gathered staff who have crowded near the glass walls to witness the spectacle, Ms. Park delivers her verdict with surgical precision. Maya Kim is terminated immediately for gross negligence, unprofessional conduct, and suspected corporate espionage. Security will escort her from the building. Her final paycheck will be held pending investigation into missing company property. Maya's legs buckle beneath her as the full weight of public humiliation crashes over her like a collapsing building. Every face in the room stares at her with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to satisfied schadenfreude. Her professional reputation lies in smoking ruins. Her grandmother's medical bills stretch ahead like an insurmountable mountain. She has nothing left. No job, no references, no hope of supporting the only family she has remaining. Tears blur Maya's vision as she struggles to gather her personal belongings from the conference table, her hands shaking so violently that she drops her pen twice. The whispered conversations of her former colleagues press against her ears like physical blows. She has become a cautionary tale, a warning about what happens to those who fail spectacular expectations. Then a voice cuts through the chaos with quiet authority that stops every conversation in the room. "Ms. Park," Kang Junho says, his tone carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "I witnessed you removing files from Ms. Kim's desk at 11:47 last night. The missing documents currently rest in your briefcase, where you placed them after sabotaging tomorrow's presentation." The conference room falls into complete silence. Ms. Park's face drains of color as every head turns toward the man whose presence has suddenly transformed from passive observer to active participant. Junho rises from his chair with fluid grace, his movements precise and deliberate as he approaches Maya's position at the front of the room. Maya stares at him through her tears, unable to process this impossible intervention. This man, who has never spoken to her directly, who exists in a sphere of power and influence far beyond her reach, has just destroyed Ms. Park's carefully orchestrated deception with a few quiet words. His dark eyes hold hers with an intensity that makes her breath catch in her throat. Junho extends his hand toward Maya, his palm upturned in a gesture that somehow manages to be both protective and commanding. "Follow me," he says, his voice carrying absolute authority that no one in the room would dare to question. His fingers close around Maya's trembling hand with surprising warmth and steadiness, anchoring her to something solid in a world that has been crumbling around her. The office staff parts before them like water as Junho guides Maya toward the conference room exit, his presence creating an invisible barrier against the stares and whispers that follow their movement. Maya feels as if she is walking through a dream, her professional destruction transformed into something resembling salvation by this man whose motives she cannot begin to understand. Ms. Park sputters protests and demands explanations, but her voice carries no weight against Junho's quiet certainty. Several senior partners request private conversations with Ms. Park regarding her conduct and the suspicious timing of the missing documents discovery. The client representative expresses interest in reviewing security footage that might clarify the evening's events. Maya's humiliation has become Ms. Park's nightmare in the space of 5 minutes. Junho's hand remains steady and warm around Maya's trembling fingers as he escorts her through the office corridors that suddenly feel foreign and hostile. She realizes that every employee they pass treats Junho with the deference usually reserved for visiting dignitaries or government officials. Conversations halt when he approaches. Junior executives step aside to create clear pathways. Administrative assistants avoid direct eye contact while maintaining perfect professional posture. The elevator ride passes in charged silence, Maya's awareness limited to the warmth of his hand, the subtle scent of his expensive cologne, and the controlled energy that radiates from his presence like heat from a carefully banked fire. She cannot form coherent thoughts beyond the recognition that this powerful stranger has somehow rescued her from complete professional destruction. though she has no idea why or what price such salvation might require. Outside the building, Junho guides Maya toward a sleek black sedan that awaits at the curb, its engine running and driver at attention. The vehicle represents luxury beyond Maya's experience, with tinted windows, spotless paint, and the kind of understated elegance that speaks of serious money and serious power. Maya hesitates at the curb, suddenly aware that accepting this man's help might carry consequences she cannot predict or control. "Get in," Junho says quietly, his hand still steadying her trembling form. "We need to discuss your future employment options in private." His words carry the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance, but his touch remains gentle as he assists her into the leather interior that smells of luxury and carefully controlled power. As the sedan pulls away from Sterling Marketing's building, Maya stares through the tinted window at the place where her professional life has just ended and begun again in the same morning. She has no idea who Kang Junho really is, what he wants from her, or why he has chosen to intervene in her destruction. But as Seoul's gleaming towers slide past the windows and his presence fills the enclosed space with quiet strength, Maya realizes that her life has just taken a turn towards something completely unknown and possibly dangerous. The elevator climbs 37 floors in silence, carrying Maya toward an unknown future in the penthouse offices of one of Seoul's most exclusive business towers. Junho stands beside her with quiet composure, his presence filling the enclosed space with controlled energy that makes her acutely aware of her secondhand clothing and the lingering scent of her morning panic. Through the elevator's glass walls, the city shrinks below them until Seoul sprawls like a detailed map of possibilities and dangers. The penthouse reception area takes Maya's breath away with its understated magnificence. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer panoramic views of the Han River and the mountains beyond, while custom furniture in rich leather and polished wood speaks of wealth that operates beyond normal corporate budgets. Original artwork lines the walls, pieces Maya recognizes from auction catalogs she has browsed in university libraries. The receptionist, an elegant woman in her 40s, greets Junho with respectful deference that suggests his importance extends far beyond typical business relationships. "Mr. Kang," the receptionist says with a slight bow, "your office is prepared for the private consultation. No interruptions have been scheduled for the remainder of the morning." Her eyes flicker toward Maya with professional curiosity, but no judgment, as if powerful men regularly bring unexpected guests to these exclusive heights. Junho's private office occupies a corner of the penthouse with windows on two walls, creating a sense of floating above the city's concerns. His desk, a massive piece of dark mahogany, sits precisely centered in the room, flanked by matching bookshelves filled with volumes in Korean, English, and Japanese. Two leather chairs face the desk, positioned at angles that encourage confidential conversation. The subtle scent of cedar and bergamot permeates the space, the same expensive cologne Maya has noticed during their brief encounters. "Sit," Junho says, gesturing toward one of the leather chairs as he moves behind his desk with fluid precision. Maya settles into the chair's embrace, overwhelmed by its comfort and the view of Seoul spreading below like a kingdom she has never imagined ruling. Her hands tremble slightly as she places them in her lap, acutely conscious of the power imbalance that this setting emphasizes with every expensive detail. Junho opens a manila folder and studies its contents for several moments, his dark eyes scanning documents with the focus of someone accustomed to analyzing complex information quickly. Maya waits in charged silence, her mind racing with questions about his identity, his motives, and the price she might be expected to pay for his intervention at Sterling Marketing. The morning's events feel surreal, like scenes from someone else's life that she has stumbled into without preparation or understanding. "Maya Kim," Junho begins, his voice carrying the measured authority she has observed during his conference room appearances. "You graduated summa cum laude from Yonsei University with dual degrees in international business and linguistics. You speak fluent Korean, English, and conversational Mandarin. You have worked 3 jobs simultaneously to support your grandmother's medical care while maintaining a perfect academic record. You have never missed a work deadline, never compromised client confidentiality, and never accepted charity from any source. Maya stares at him with growing alarm, realizing the depth of information he possesses about her personal life and financial struggles. This level of knowledge requires resources and connections that extend far beyond casual business observation. "Who are you?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you know so much about my private circumstances?" "I am someone who recognizes exceptional capability when I observe it," Junho replies, closing the folder with deliberate precision. "I require an executive assistant with your specific qualifications for my international business operations. Fluent translation services, cultural sensitivity, absolute discretion, and proven loyalty under pressure. Your performance during Ms. Park's sabotage demonstrated integrity that cannot be purchased or taught." Maya's mind struggles to process this unexpected career opportunity emerging from the ruins of her morning's humiliation. But questions multiply faster than her ability to articulate them. What kind of business requires such emphasis on discretion and loyalty? What international operations would justify the extraordinary compensation she suspects he might offer? And why would a man of obvious wealth and power choose her when dozens of more qualified candidates surely exist? The position offers an annual salary of $150,000. Junho continues, his tone suggesting this figure represents the beginning rather than the conclusion of his offer. Complete medical coverage for yourself and your grandmother, including experimental treatments not available through standard insurance plans. A private apartment in Gangnam District, fully furnished and secured, with utilities and maintenance included. Personal transportation as needed for work-related functions. Maya's breath catches in her throat as she calculates the impossible mathematics of financial security. $150,000 annually would eliminate every source of stress that has dominated her adult life. Her grandmother could receive the best medical care available. She could pursue graduate education or professional development without the constant pressure of survival-level economics. The apartment alone represents a lifestyle she has only glimpsed through magazine photographs and television dramas. "What would you expect from me in return?" Maya asks, fighting to keep her voice steady as her heart hammers against her ribs. The offer seems too generous for standard administrative work, suggesting responsibilities or risks that he has not yet disclosed. Her experience with Ms. Park's deceptions has taught her to examine attractive offers for hidden costs and unexpected consequences. Complete confidentiality regarding all business operations and client relationships. Junho responds without hesitation. Translation and cultural consultation for international meetings and negotiations. Administrative support for domestic and overseas travel arrangements. Availability for evening and weekend functions as required. Absolute loyalty and discretion in all professional matters. His requirements sound reasonable for executive-level assistant work, but something in his tone suggests layers of complexity beneath the surface description. Maya recognizes the careful phrasing of someone who reveals only what observers need to know while maintaining significant information in reserve. She has learned to read between lines during her months at Sterling Marketing, where office politics required constant attention to unspoken meanings and hidden agendas. "What kind of international business?" Maya presses, sensing that this question might reveal the true nature of her potential employment. "Are your operations completely legitimate? Would I be required to do anything illegal or unethical?" Her grandmother raised her with principles that money alone cannot compromise, despite their current desperate circumstances. Junho's expression remains neutral, but Maya detects a slight shift in his posture that suggests her questions have touched something significant. "My business interests include real estate development, international shipping, and security consultation for corporate clients. All operations comply with applicable laws and regulations. However, the nature of some clients and contracts requires absolute confidentiality to protect competitive advantages and personal safety." The phrase personal safety hangs in the air between them like a warning bell, confirming Maya's growing suspicion that this opportunity involves risks beyond typical corporate employment. She thinks of her grandmother's deteriorating health, the medical bills that accumulate faster than her ability to pay them, and the complete absence of alternative employment after this morning's public destruction of her professional reputation. Maya stares through the floor-to-ceiling windows at Seoul's sprawling complexity, weighing impossible choices between financial salvation and unknown dangers. If I refuse your offer, she says quietly, what options remain available to me? Ms. Park's accusations of corporate espionage will follow me to every potential employer in the city. My professional references have been destroyed along with my reputation. That assessment is accurate, Junho confirms with brutal honesty. Sterling Marketing's influence extends throughout Seoul's business community. Ms. Park's charges, though false, will make finding comparable employment extremely difficult. Your grandmother's medical needs cannot wait for your professional rehabilitation, which might require years to accomplish if it proves possible at all. Maya closes her eyes against the stark mathematics of her situation, feeling the weight of impossible responsibilities settle across her shoulders like a lead blanket. Her grandmother depends on her completely. The medical treatments that keep her alive consume resources faster than Maya's earning capacity can replenish them. Pride and principles matter less than survival when death waits for monthly payment schedules. I need time to consider your offer, Maya says, opening her eyes to meet his steady gaze. This decision will affect the rest of my life in ways I cannot predict or control. I cannot make such a commitment without understanding all its implications. You have until this evening to decide, Junho replies, his tone suggesting this timeline is non-negotiable. The position cannot remain open indefinitely, and my business schedule requires immediate staffing solutions. If you accept, we begin tomorrow morning with orientation and initial project assignments. He slides a business card across the desk toward her, the simple white rectangle containing only a phone number embossed in dark blue ink. Call this number before 8 p.m. tonight with your decision. If you choose to decline, I will ensure that Sterling Marketing's accusations are quietly withdrawn and your professional reputation is restored, though this process may take several months to complete fully. Maya picks up the card with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of expensive card stock and the invisible pressure of the decision it represents. Her entire future balances on this single choice between certain financial security and unknown risks, between accepting help from a mysterious benefactor and maintaining independence that may no longer exist. As she stands to leave his office, Maya realizes that her life has already changed irrevocably. Whether she accepts or declines Junho's offer, she cannot return to the simple struggle of her previous existence. The morning's events have opened doors that cannot be closed and revealed power structures she never knew existed. Tonight, she must choose which version of an uncertain future she has the courage to embrace. 3 months after accepting Junho's proposition, Maya stands in her secure Gangnam apartment, speaking fluent Mandarin to a Shanghai construction executive while coordinating a multi-million-dollar real estate development deal. Her grandmother rests comfortably in the bedroom down the hall, her medication regimen now including experimental treatments that have stabilized her condition remarkably. The transformation of Maya's life feels so complete that she sometimes struggles to remember the desperation that drove her to accept employment with a man whose true nature she is only beginning to understand. The apartment itself represents luxury beyond Maya's previous imagination. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the Han River, while custom furniture and state-of-the-art technology create an environment of comfort and security. The building's lobby features discreet but obvious security personnel who nod respectfully when Maya passes. Her neighbors include prominent business executives and government officials, people whose lives operate in spheres of influence she has only recently discovered. Maya's professional wardrobe now consists of tailored suits and elegant dresses that complement her natural beauty while projecting the competence and sophistication required for international business negotiations. Her linguistic skills have proven invaluable as she facilitates communications between Junho's Korean operations and his expanding network of Chinese, Japanese, and Southeast Asian partners. She has coordinated shipping schedules, translated complex contracts, and managed confidential correspondence that moves millions of dollars across international borders. Her relationship with Junho has evolved from formal employer-employee interactions into something approaching partnership, though she remains acutely aware of the power differential that governs their every exchange. He treats her with respect that borders on deference, consulting her opinions on cultural matters and business strategies while maintaining the controlled authority that defines his presence in every room. During late evening work sessions in his penthouse office, Maya has observed glimpses of the man behind the carefully maintained facade of corporate power. Junho's business empire, she has learned through careful observation and discreet research, extends far beyond the legitimate real estate and shipping operations that provide public faces for more complex activities. His meetings include individuals whose expensive clothing cannot quite disguise the hardness in their eyes or the deference they show toward a man who clearly commands more than financial respect. Security arrangements for his properties exceed typical corporate standards, involving personnel whose backgrounds suggest military or law enforcement training. Tonight, Maya works alone in Junho's penthouse office, finalizing contracts for a shipping deal that will establish new trade routes between Busan and Hong Kong. The building's usual daytime energy has settled into the quiet intensity of after-hours business, when the most sensitive negotiations occur away from public scrutiny. Through the office windows, Seoul's lights spread below like a constellation of possibilities and hidden dangers. Junho enters the office carrying 2 cups of tea, his approach silent despite his large frame and expensive leather shoes. He has removed his suit jacket, and his white shirt emphasizes the controlled strength of his shoulders, while his dark eyes reflect the fatigue of someone who carries responsibilities that extend far beyond normal business concerns. He sets 1 cup beside Maya's laptop and settles into the chair across from her desk with fluid grace. "You have worked late every evening this week," he observes, his voice carrying the gentle concern she has learned to recognize beneath his professional composure. "The Hong Kong negotiations will continue tomorrow. You should rest before the morning conference calls with potential partners whose trust must be earned through demonstrated competence rather than demanded through authority." Maya looks up from her laptop screen, noting the exhaustion that tightens the corners of Junho's eyes despite his controlled expression. "You have worked later than I have every night," she replies with growing confidence in their professional relationship. "When do you find time to rest? Or do you consider sleep another luxury you cannot afford in whatever business really occupies your time?" Her question hangs in the air between them with the weight of months of accumulated observations and carefully unasked questions. Maya has learned to read the signs of Junho's true occupation through overheard phone calls, mysterious visitors, and security measures that extend far beyond protecting business documents. She knows he is involved in activities that exist in gray areas between legitimate commerce and organized crime, though he has never confirmed her suspicions directly. Junho studies her face for several moments, his dark eyes searching her expression for signs of judgment or fear. When he speaks, his voice carries a gravity she has not heard before, as if he has decided to trust her with information that could endanger them both if shared with the wrong people. "My father built a legitimate shipping business that provided good lives for hundreds of families," Junho begins, his controlled composure cracking slightly to reveal old pain beneath the surface. He refused to pay protection money to the Wangpa syndicate, believing that honest business should not require criminal approval. "When I was 15, they murdered both my parents and burned our warehouse to demonstrate the consequences of independence." Maya's breath catches in her throat as she recognizes the moment when their professional relationship transforms into something more personal and dangerous. The revelation explains so much about Junho's controlled intensity, his emphasis on loyalty and discretion, and the security measures that surround every aspect of his operations. "I rebuilt everything they destroyed," Junho continues, his voice steady despite the emotional weight of his words. "But I learned that legitimate business cannot survive without protection from illegitimate forces. The shipping companies, real estate developments, and security consultations provide cover for activities that ensure my family's businesses can operate without interference from predators who view honest commerce as weakness to exploit." Maya realizes that she has been working for a man who straddles the line between legitimate business and organized crime, using criminal methods to protect legal enterprises from other criminals. The moral complexity of this arrangement challenges her principles while explaining why her position requires such extraordinary discretion and loyalty. She is not merely translating business documents, but facilitating operations that could result in imprisonment or death if exposed to the wrong authorities. "Does this knowledge change your willingness to continue our professional relationship?" Junho asks, his dark eyes studying her face with intensity that suggests her answer carries significant weight for both their futures. I will not compel your silence through threats or force, but neither can I allow sensitive information to reach my enemies through careless disclosure. Maya considers the question while weighing everything she has learned about the man who rescued her from professional destruction and provided security for her grandmother's medical care. She thinks about the families whose livelihoods depend on businesses Junho protects, the legitimate operations that thrive under his security umbrella, and the alternative of returning to poverty while criminals prey on honest workers. I understand why you do what you do, Maya replies quietly, meeting his steady gaze with growing resolve. My grandmother taught me that sometimes good people must make difficult choices to protect those who cannot protect themselves. As long as your activities serve that purpose, I can support them with clear conscience. Junho's relief shows in the slight relaxation of his shoulders and the warmth that enters his dark eyes for the first time since Maya has known him. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman who understands that the world operates in shades of gray rather than absolute moral categories. She would approve of the security you have provided for her medical care through your association with my necessarily complex business operations. Over the following weeks, Maya notices changes in the atmosphere surrounding Junho's operations that suggest external pressures beyond normal business competition. Security personnel become more vigilant. Meetings occur with greater frequency and urgency, and Junho's controlled intensity sharpens into something approaching concern. During a late-night translation session involving shipping schedules and warehouse locations, Maya overhears phone conversations in Japanese that include references to territorial disputes and resource allocation conflicts. The first direct sign of trouble appears as a black sedan that begins appearing outside Maya's apartment building at irregular intervals, its occupants conducting obvious surveillance while making no effort to conceal their presence. Maya reports these observations to Junho, who responds by doubling her security detail and installing additional monitoring equipment throughout her building. The threat feels abstract until it becomes personal. Maya receives a phone call on her secure business line from a man speaking accented Korean who claims to represent interested parties seeking information about Junho's shipping schedules and warehouse security arrangements. The caller offers substantial payment for copies of confidential documents and suggests that Maya's continued health depends on her cooperation with their reasonable requests for business intelligence. She reports the attempted recruitment immediately to Junho, whose reaction confirms the seriousness of the threat they now face together. The Yamamoto family has decided to expand their sole operations by eliminating established competition, he explains with deadly calm. They view our shipping network as valuable territory that should belong to more experienced criminal organizations than a Korean upstart who lacks proper respect for traditional hierarchies. Maya realizes that her association with Junho has placed her directly in the crosshairs of a conflict between organized crime families whose resources and ruthlessness exceed anything she has previously imagined. Her decision to maintain loyalty to the man who saved her from poverty has committed her to dangers that could result in kidnapping, torture, or death if she chooses wrong sides in battles she never asked to join. The test of her commitment comes when two well-dressed Japanese men approach her outside her apartment building, offering briefcases full of cash in exchange for information about Junho's business operations and personal security arrangements. Maya's heart pounds as she recognizes the moment when abstract loyalty becomes concrete choice between safety and principle. I know nothing about Mr. Kang's private business, Maya tells them with steady voice that betrays none of her terror. I handle translation services and administrative tasks for legitimate companies that comply with all applicable regulations. If you require business information, I suggest you contact our public relations department during normal operating hours. The men exchange glances that suggest her response was both expected and disappointing, confirming that this encounter represents a test whose failure would carry consequences far worse than termination of employment. As they disappear into Seoul's crowded streets, Maya understands that her life has become irrevocably entangled with forces that operate beyond normal legal or moral boundaries, requiring courage she has never needed to summon before. Maya wakes in complete darkness, her head pounding from whatever drug they used to incapacitate her outside the medical clinic where she had been visiting her grandmother. Cold concrete presses against her cheek as consciousness returns in waves of nausea and terror. Her hands are zip-tied behind her back, cutting off circulation to her fingers, while the metallic taste of fear coats her tongue like copper pennies. The warehouse around her echoes with distant sounds of machinery and muffled voices speaking Japanese. Through the fog of panic and disorientation, Maya pieces together the events that led to her current nightmare. She had been leaving Seoul National University Hospital after her grandmother's weekly treatment when two men in expensive suits approached her in the parking garage. They knew her name, knew about her employment with Junho, and made it clear that resistance would result in her grandmother's immediate termination of medical care. The chloroform-soaked cloth had silenced her protests before she could scream for help. The warehouse stretches into shadows beyond the single overhead light that illuminates her makeshift prison. Shipping containers stacked like building blocks create a maze of hiding places and escape routes that Maya cannot access with her hands secured behind her back. The air smells of rust, motor oil, and something else she cannot identify but instinctively recognizes as dangerous. Her business suit, wrinkled and stained from hours on the concrete floor, offers no protection against the cold that seeps through the building's metal walls. Three men emerge from the shadows, their movements casual despite the gravity of their criminal enterprise. The leader, a middle-aged Japanese man with silver hair and expensive eyeglasses, introduces himself as Yamamoto Hiroshi, though Maya suspects this name carries more weight in criminal circles than she understands. His companions remain silent, their hands resting near concealed weapons that create bulges beneath their tailored jackets. Ms. Kim, Yamamoto says with polite formality that makes the situation more terrifying than outright threats would have been. You work for a man whose territorial ambitions exceed his understanding of traditional business arrangements in Seoul's shipping industry. We require his withdrawal from operations that conflict with established syndicate interests. Your continued well-being depends on his willingness to prioritize your safety over his financial considerations. Maya's heart hammers against her ribs as she realizes she has become a bargaining chip in a conflict whose stakes extend far beyond her ability to influence or control. The Yamamoto family has kidnapped her to pressure Junho into surrendering business territory that represents millions of dollars in annual revenue. Her value exists only as leverage against a man whose true feelings toward her remain professionally ambiguous despite months of growing personal connection. Fear paralyzes her voice as she struggles to form words through lips that feel numb and unresponsive. My employer makes his own business decisions. Maya manages to whisper, her throat raw from whatever chemicals they use to render her unconscious. I have no influence over territorial agreements or syndicate negotiations. You have chosen the wrong person to pressure him into compliance with your demands. Yamamoto's smile carries the cold satisfaction of a predator who has successfully cornered his prey. Mr. Kang's behavior during our previous negotiations suggested unusual emotional investment in your continued safety, he replies with clinical precision. Men in our profession rarely risk valuable assets for mere employees. Your importance to him exceeds professional boundaries, making you an effective tool for encouraging his cooperation with reasonable territorial redistributions. Hours pass in a nightmare of waiting and escalating terror as Maya realizes that Junho's rescue depends on his willingness to sacrifice significant portions of his criminal empire to secure her release. She knows enough about his business operations to understand that surrendering shipping routes and warehouse facilities would cripple his ability to protect legitimate businesses from other predators. Her life has become the price for his choice between love and power. The warehouse door explodes inward with a violence that sends metal fragments flying across the concrete floor like deadly confetti. Maya's scream dies in her throat as armed figures in tactical gear pour through the breach with military precision, their movements coordinated by someone whose understanding of warfare exceeds typical criminal enforcement. The overhead lights fail simultaneously, plunging the warehouse into darkness broken only by muzzle flashes and the red dots of laser sights tracking across walls and human targets. Maya closes her eyes and presses her face against the cold concrete as gunfire erupts around her position, the sound deafening in the enclosed space, while spent casings rain down like metallic hail. She cannot see the battle that determines her fate, but she hears shouts in Korean that suggest Junho's forces have gained tactical superiority over their Japanese opponents. The smell of gunpowder and blood mingles with the warehouse's industrial odors to create an atmosphere of violence that makes her stomach churn with nausea. When silence finally returns to the warehouse, emergency lighting reveals a scene of controlled destruction that speaks to the professional competence of Junho's security team. Yamamoto and his associates have vanished, either dead or evacuated through escape routes that failed to provide the sanctuary they expected. Maya remains unharmed but traumatized, her zip-tied hands numb and her mind struggling to process the speed and violence of her rescue. Junho appears through the smoke and emergency lighting like an avenging angel, his expensive suit somehow still immaculate despite the chaos he has orchestrated to secure her freedom. His dark eyes scan Maya's position with an intensity that reveals emotions carefully hidden beneath his professional composure. When he kneels beside her on the concrete floor, his hands shake slightly as he cuts through the plastic restraints that have carved deep marks into her wrists. "Are you injured?" he asks, his voice rough with barely controlled emotion as he helps her sit upright against a shipping container. His hands move over her arms and shoulders with gentle precision, checking for wounds while his dark eyes search her face for signs of trauma beyond the obvious terror and exhaustion. Maya shakes her head mutely, unable to form words through the overwhelming relief of being alive and safe in his presence. "They will never threaten you again," Junho continues, his tone carrying the absolute certainty of someone who has just eliminated an enemy with permanent finality. The Yamamoto family's sole operations have been terminated along with their leadership structure. Their assets will be redistributed among organizations that understand the consequences of targeting what belongs to me. Maya stares at him through tears of relief and residual fear, recognizing the transformation in his demeanor from controlled businessman to something far more dangerous and protective. The man who rescued her from professional destruction at Sterling Marketing has revealed the full extent of his power and willingness to use violence to protect those he considers his responsibility. She realizes that his feelings toward her extend far beyond professional appreciation or charitable obligation. "You came for me," Maya whispers, her voice breaking with emotion as the magnitude of his actions begins to penetrate her shock. "You risked everything you have built to save someone who is just your employee. Why would you sacrifice so much for a person whose value cannot justify such dangerous expenditure of resources and personnel?" Junho's controlled facade cracks completely as he pulls her against his chest with desperate intensity, his arms encircling her trembling form while his face presses into her natural hair that smells of fear and concrete dust. "You are not just my employee," he admits against her ear, his voice rough with emotions he has never allowed himself to express. "You are mine to protect, mine to cherish, and mine to love, even if such feelings make me vulnerable to enemies who would exploit any weakness they discover." Maya's heart stops and restarts as she processes his confession, understanding that their professional relationship has transformed into something far more personal and dangerous. His possessive declaration should terrify her, but instead it fills the empty spaces in her chest with warmth that drives away the cold terror of her captivity. She realizes that her own feelings have evolved from gratitude to something deeper during their months of working together in the gray areas between legal and criminal enterprises. "I love you too," Maya breathes against his neck, her confession carrying the weight of absolute truth despite the violence and danger that surrounds their relationship. "I choose you despite the risks, despite the moral complexity, despite everything that makes loving you dangerous and difficult. You saved me from poverty and gave me purpose beyond mere survival." Junho pulls back to look into her eyes, his dark gaze searching her face for any sign of doubt or fear that might contradict her words. When he finds only exhausted honesty and growing affection, he cups her face in his hands with infinite gentleness and kisses her with months of suppressed emotion finally released. Maya melts into his embrace, tasting cedar and bergamot cologne mixed with the metallic residue of violence, and the sweet relief of being completely safe in the arms of the most dangerous man she has ever known. "You belong to me now," Junho murmurs against her lips, his possession declaration carrying both promise and warning. "I will never let anyone threaten what is mine again." The Yamamoto family discovered the price of targeting my woman, and their elimination will serve as warning to others who might consider similar strategies. 6 weeks after the warehouse rescue, Maya stands in Junho's penthouse office overlooking Seoul's morning skyline, coordinating legitimate business deals that will establish new trade partnerships across Southeast Asia. The bruises from her kidnapping have faded completely, but the emotional scars have been healed through Junho's constant attention and the absolute security that now surrounds every aspect of her life. The Yamamoto family's elimination sent clear messages throughout Seoul's criminal underworld that targeting Kang Junho's interests carries consequences that extend far beyond business competition. Her grandmother's medical condition has stabilized remarkably under the care of Seoul's most prestigious specialists, the experimental treatments now supplemented by personalized nursing care that ensures comfort and dignity during her remaining years. Maya visits her every morning before work, bringing fresh flowers and updates about her transformed life that include carefully edited versions of her relationship with the powerful man who has become the center of her world. Maya's role within Junho's organization has evolved from administrative assistant to trusted partner in both legitimate and necessary criminal enterprises. She handles international negotiations with the cultural sensitivity and linguistic precision that have earned respect from business partners who initially viewed her as decorative accessory to Junho's power. Her opinions on market analysis and strategic planning influence decisions that affect millions of dollars in revenue and hundreds of jobs throughout his expanding empire. This morning carries special significance that Maya senses through Junho's unusual nervousness and the formal atmosphere that has replaced their typically comfortable professional dynamic. He has scheduled no meetings, accepted no phone calls, and instructed his security team to ensure complete privacy for conversations whose importance he has not yet revealed. Maya recognizes the signs of momentous decisions approaching through the careful attention he pays to details that normally receive casual consideration. Junho enters the office carrying a small velvet box that immediately focuses Maya's attention with laser precision. His expensive suit appears freshly pressed despite the early hour, his dark hair styled with extra care, and his cologne carries the familiar scent of cedar and bergamot that has become synonymous with safety and love in Maya's transformed world. His controlled composure reveals slight cracks that suggest the contents of that velvet box represent far more than expensive jewelry. "Maya," he begins, his voice carrying the formal gravity she has learned to associate with life-changing pronouncements. "Our professional relationship began with a business arrangement that provided mutual benefits for clearly defined services and compensation. Over the past months, that arrangement has evolved into something far more personal and permanent than either of us anticipated when you accepted employment with my organization." Maya's heart begins hammering against her ribs as she recognizes the prelude to a conversation that will determine the course of her entire future. The small velvet box in Junho's hands represents possibilities she has barely allowed herself to imagine despite the growing intimacy and emotional connection that have replaced their initial formal boundaries. Her breath catches as she realizes that the powerful man who rescued her from poverty is preparing to offer her something beyond financial security or professional advancement. "You have proven yourself worthy of complete trust through loyalty that extends far beyond contractual obligations," Junho continues, his dark eyes holding hers with intensity that makes her feel simultaneously vulnerable and completely secure. "You maintained confidentiality under extreme pressure, accepted moral complexity without judgment, and chose personal danger over betrayal when our enemies attempted to exploit your position for strategic advantage." Maya remembers the terror of her kidnapping and the moment when she chose principle over safety, understanding now that her decision to protect Junho's secrets despite threats and torture represented a test whose successful completion has earned her consideration for permanent partnership in both business and personal matters. The realization that her courage under pressure has qualified her for privileges beyond her imagination fills her with pride and anticipation. Junho kneels beside her chair with fluid grace, opening the velvet box to reveal a diamond engagement ring whose size and quality reflect wealth that operates on levels she is still learning to comprehend. The stone catches Sol's morning light through the floor-to-ceiling windows, throwing prismatic reflections across the office walls while Maya struggles to process the magnitude of what he is offering her through this gesture. Maya Kim, will you marry me and become my partner in all aspects of life and business? Junho asks, his voice steady despite the vulnerability that such a proposal represents for a man whose survival depends on maintaining emotional control in dangerous circumstances. Will you accept the responsibilities and privileges of becoming Mrs. Kang Junho, with everything that title entails in terms of social position, business partnership, and personal commitment? Maya stares at the diamond ring while her mind races through the implications of accepting marriage to a man whose empire straddles the boundaries between legitimate business and organized crime. Becoming his wife would grant her access to power and wealth beyond her imagination, but also expose her to dangers that could threaten her life and her grandmother's safety if their enemies decide to target family members rather than direct business interests. Yes, Maya whispers, her voice growing stronger as conviction replaces uncertainty. Yes, I will marry you and accept everything that comes with being your wife and partner. I choose this life, this love, and this future despite the risks and responsibilities that make our relationship different from ordinary marriages between ordinary people. Junho's relief shows in the warmth that transforms his controlled features into something approaching happiness as he slips the engagement ring onto Maya's trembling finger. The diamond fits perfectly, its weight both substantial and surprisingly comfortable, as if her hand was designed to carry this symbol of commitment to a man whose love comes wrapped in protection, power, and permanent security. The wedding will take place in 6 weeks, Junho announces, his tone shifting from vulnerable suitor to decisive businessman as he outlines plans that have clearly been developing for considerable time. A private ceremony for immediate family and trusted associates, followed by a reception that will formally introduce you as my wife to Sol's business and social communities. Legal arrangements are already in progress to ensure your financial security and legal protection under all circumstances. Maya learns that her new status will include joint ownership of legitimate business enterprises, access to international banking accounts that provide security beyond government reach, and legal protections that shield family members from prosecution related to criminal activities they do not directly participate in or knowledge. Junho has spent weeks consulting lawyers and accountants to create structures that protect Maya's interests while maintaining the operational flexibility his organization requires. Your grandmother will receive the highest quality medical care available anywhere in the world, Junho promises, his attention to her family's needs reflecting the depth of his commitment to their shared future. I have established a medical trust fund that ensures her comfort and treatment regardless of cost or availability. She will want for nothing during her remaining years. Over the following weeks, Maya's transformation from desperate employee to wealthy wife accelerates through wedding preparations that introduce her to Sol's most exclusive social circles. She learns the subtle protocols of high society gatherings while maintaining the authentic personality that originally attracted Junho's attention. Designer clothing and professional styling enhance her natural beauty without compromising the strength and intelligence that make her a valuable partner rather than decorative accessory. The wedding ceremony takes place in the penthouse ballroom of Seoul's most prestigious hotel, attended by business leaders whose legitimate enterprises depend on Junho's protection and criminal associates whose loyalty has been earned through fair dealing and demonstrated competence. Maya's grandmother, resplendent in silk and diamonds that reflect her new daughter-in-law's elevated status, witnesses the union with tears of joy and relief that her granddaughter has found both love and security in a dangerous world. During their honeymoon in Switzerland, Maya and Junho established joint business ventures that will provide legitimate cover for expanded criminal operations while generating substantial legal income through real estate development and international consulting services. Maya's linguistic skills and cultural knowledge prove invaluable for negotiations with European partners who view their interracial marriage as evidence of modern sophistication rather than suspicious irregularity. 6 months after their wedding, Maya manages a portfolio of legitimate businesses worth over $50 million while serving as Junho's primary advisor for international expansion strategies. Her decisions affect hundreds of employees who depend on their companies for steady income and comprehensive benefits that exceed industry standards. She has become a power in Seoul's business community whose opinions carry weight independent of her husband's influence. Maya's transformation from desperate administrative assistant counting her last $400 to wealthy businesswoman coordinating million-dollar international deals represents the kind of fairy tale ascent that seems impossible until it happens. Yet her success stems not from luck or charity but from competence, loyalty, and courage that earned respect through demonstrated performance under pressure. Standing in their private office overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, Maya reflects on the journey that brought her from public humiliation at Sterling Marketing to partnership in one of Korea's most successful business empires. The woman who once feared eviction notices and medical bills now coordinates international shipping deals while wearing diamond jewelry worth more than most people's houses. Her grandmother receives medical care that extends far beyond what insurance could provide, living comfortably in a private suite within their secured compound. Junho enters the office carrying 2 cups of evening tea, his approach silent despite his substantial presence and expensive leather shoes. His dark eyes hold the satisfaction of a man whose risky investments in human potential have generated returns beyond his most optimistic projections. Maya has exceeded every expectation he held when he rescued her from Ms. Park's sabotage, proving herself worthy not just of protection, but of partnership in building an empire that serves both criminal necessity and legitimate purpose. You have surpassed every hope I had when I offered you employment 9 months ago, he tells Maya, as they share quiet moments watching Seoul's lights spread below their penthouse windows. You have become my equal partner in business, my beloved wife in marriage, and my most trusted advisor in matters that require both courage and wisdom. Maya leans into his embrace, breathing the familiar scent of cedar and bergamot cologne that now carries associations with safety, love, and unlimited possibility rather than intimidating power and mysterious danger. The man who seemed so unreachably powerful during their first encounter has revealed himself to be someone whose strength serves protective purposes rather than selfish ambition. I love the life we have built together, Maya replies against his shoulder, her voice carrying absolute conviction about choices that have led them through danger to security, through formal arrangement to genuine partnership, through professional respect to enduring love. You saved me from poverty and gave me purpose beyond survival. Now we save others through businesses that provide good jobs and protection from predators who would exploit honest workers. The future stretches ahead of them like an unwritten story whose chapters will be filled with continued success, expanding influence, and the kind of love that survives because it serves purposes larger than individual happiness. Maya and Junho have built something that will endure because it combines personal devotion with practical necessity, romantic passion with business acumen, and individual fulfillment with collective responsibility for those who depend on their decisions. In a world where fairy tales usually remain fiction, Maya Kim became Mrs. Kang Junho through courage, competence, and the recognition that sometimes the most dangerous choices lead to the most extraordinary destinations.